Welcome to Unbiased and on the Fence. I'm Shane. Thank you so much for joining. I've got my daughter here in just a little bit to share some of her experiences, followed by Michelle. But I wanted to share these images I just got from Nancy just a little bit ago. She was in Ottawa. She said it took her about 6 hours with all the people on all the overpasses to even get to Ottawa. She's about 2.5 hours away, but it took 6 hours. And yeah, she had a good time there. She said the love was incredible, the energy was great, and it was like just an incredible experience. And I'm so glad she was able to send some pictures. Good to see you, Nancy. She said she was hugging people with free hug signs. I think that's awesome. And that's so cool because I got to give you a hug at ECETI, and now you're there in Ottawa. It's a big freedom rally, giving people hugs, and it just makes the world seem so small. Let's try the volume here. Sounds like a party. Yeah, Nancy said it was incredibly cold, but it doesn't seem to be bothering anybody out there. That's so awesome, Nancy. Let's see. There she is on the highway. Oh, I can totally see why it took so long. I'm going to turn this down a little bit because it's a bit loud. All the truck horns. Look at all those people. We'll hear from Michelle in a little bit, but she actually got to make it to one of these overpasses in her area. People getting out of the car. It's like a party. Here we go. Now it's repeating. All right, so I also had an opportunity for Gabby to answer some questions about some experiences she's been having. Let's check it out.
So a few days ago, I want to say it was probably the 25th, January 25th, 2022, and I was just hanging out with my son. We're just hanging out, and I was mimicking him, you know, just messing with him. We're just laughing, having a good time, and all of a sudden, I felt what I'm calling a whoosh. It was something that entered in the left side of my head, and as it entered in, my left eardrum, like, kind of popped, and then I felt it kind of stall inside of my head, and then it exited, popping this eardrum as well. And it just happened so fast, and then I paused, and I looked at my son, and I'm like, and I couldn't really hear him. His voice was muffled, and I'm like, shh, be quiet for a second. And he, like, stopped, and I looked around. I was kind of freaked out. And I shook my earlobes, and then I could hear again. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. And then, like, the rest of the night, it was pretty much on and off, like, ringing and buzzing ears, mostly on my right side where it felt like it exited. And I didn't see anything, hear anything other than that. And then the next day, I work from home on the computer, and I went on my lunch break. And I just went to the floor. I was watching like a spiritual video and doing some yoga. And all of a sudden, like, something fell off. So I paused the video. I sat up and I looked around. And my surroundings just felt a little bit weird. And I'm in my house all day. So, you know, it feels comfortable to me. So I look around. It just feels weird and off. And then my ears start buzzing. I look down to the rug and I see grids. And it was like looking around, like everything just seemed, it was like the floor and the walls, and it was more so when my eyes would get kind of hazy. If I focused on anything, the grids would go away. But just looking at the overall, I could see these grids, which is just really strange. And everything just felt really just not real. Like, just seeing everything with the grids, it felt like I was playing Sims or something. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it was a really weird situation. And then, of course, you know, when my lunch was up, I went back to work, and by the time I got off, I wasn't, you know, focusing on a computer monitor. I wasn't seeing grids, and by the time I got off work, everything seemed normal. The same day I saw the grids, I came over here, and I was in the kitchen. I was kind of telling my family about what I had experienced, and he was back in, you know, his office, and my mom picked up this kind of like ceramic bowl to, you know, serve dinner into, and I'm like, hold on a second, I think that has lead in it. And she's like, what? Like, and I don't know how, like, I don't think about lead. It's not something that I'm real, like,
just
wary
like out
about.
of nowhere.
Yeah, it was just out of nowhere. And I'm like, give me that bowl. And I flipped it over and I read, you know, the company on it. And so I read that and I look it up. I'm like, does Gibson's dishware have lead in it? It's like, yes, they have. We tested these few, like, companies. Gibson was a high lead count. And I'm like, oh my God. And then she like threw away the bowls and everything. And just, I had goosebumps. I'm like, I don't know where that came from. With my son, Dean, he seems to read my mind a lot. Like, I don't know if I told you, like, after Jeff died, like, I was, like, a few weeks ago, or maybe even a month ago, I was thinking of him. He was like, you missing your uncle, huh? And, like, he'll read my thoughts about things, and I've noticed spirits in my apartment, and he's seen them too. So like at the beginning of when we were staying there, he would talk about the guys in the hallway and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, I thought he was just playing around. He's 5. But then after that, I would see them at the corner of my eye, like go by, you know, in the hallway. Sometimes when I'm working, they'd walk by me, or it would feel like somebody was standing behind me.
Right.
And it's never threatening, like, even though it was like a shadow and it wasn't something light, like it never feels threatening to me. So
Yeah. And what's cool about being the weird one like me and my family is that anytime some weird stuff happens to somebody, they always come to me. So.
Oh yeah, it's good to have him, because I always have really prophetic dreams, and so I'll text and be like, I dreamed this happened, and then it really happened in real life. Like, a lot of it's immediate. Like, I had a dream that my friend's daughter got a video banned on TikTok, and then it did, like, a day after. Like, you know, just really random stuff that it's not like I went to bed thinking, oh, you know, her videos better keep them safe. Like, it's just stuff that's like...
It just happened.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on, Gabby.
No problem.
Now I got to talk to Michelle just a little bit ago. Let's take a look at that. Okay, it's been a while, but Michelle Wolfe is back with us, you guys. She's doing great. We were going to get together late last year, but of course we've had, winter storms and power outages. You've gone through some stuff up there with your mom in Canada. Of course, Michelle's a Canadian. Yay to Canada right now, because you guys rock. No more of my attic jokes up there for Canada. You know? You guys are the penthouse.
Well, that's how we were able to pull off the Deus Ex Machina, and they didn't see it coming, eh?
Right.
They thought they were just quiet in the attic, you know. Yeah, we're quiet, but
the complete
the line was drawn in the sand.
The complete media blackout on this whole thing is incredible. Like, I mean, I've seen people really surprised, like, why isn't this on TV? You know, it's like they're revealing themselves so much. I mean, we know they don't show stuff on TV unless it's what they want us to think
and
or
it's
whatever.
Staged, right? And
there's so
actors
much.
And
and the revolution will now be televised, right?
Yeah, it's just amazing seeing all those little things actually play out. That's been one of the things I've really appreciated, or sort of finding my purpose in this process, is really this observation role and what that means. And so taking a step back over these last few months of doing the show has really allowed me to do that, you know. so many opinions, I kind of really reached an apex, and I just really felt intuitively that it was a time to pull back and just observe. And with so many opinions, everybody having an opinion, which is great, it's just part of this process. But there nobody's really listening because everybody's putting in the 2 cents and having a story behind why and everything else. And so I really took this quiet time in such chaotic to go to the opposite end inside and work on the experience of not having that. You don't have to have an opinion on everything, what it means to not build a story on every circumstance or situation, right? To not build all the whys, and sort of it strips back a lot to the core of your true self, and why you do what you do, and creates a lot of clarity. So just exploring that process and the finer details of this energetic experience
Well,
as well.
what's really cool about watching what's going on up there in Canada and all over the world, by the way, but you won't see it anywhere unless you go look for it. But it's happening all over, and I can even cover it because it's not about this or that. It's simply about freedom. Enough is enough. We want our freedom, and it's like basic. Everyone can agree on that, right? So it's like you see this wonderful energy of unity as all these people are rallying behind these truckers that have made their way across Canada. I think at one point I heard this convoy was like 8 hours long, driving 100 kilometers an hour, that long. And people in tears because they're on the highway and every single overpass has people with their flags cheering them on, waving them on. And you thought, hey, I live in this area. I'll go up there. I'll probably be the only one there. And tell us what happened.
Well, initially when I heard about it, like when it first started, the few days before it made its way right by where I live, and I was like, oh, that'd be really something, even if I'm the only one out there on the bridge, to just go see it and be a part of that, and sort of step out of the cubby hole that we've all been shoved into, or the attic, as you would say, right?
The penthouse.
We've all been
now.
shoved in
It's
the
nice.
attic. Be quiet and hide so they don't find you and make you take the poke and everything else. Like, it's sorry.
Enough is enough.
Amazing. Yeah, it's enough is enough, and
the energy behind it is so fabulous. I hear all these children cheering on the truckers and everyone, and it's often we forget about the toll this has had on the children with having to wear the mask at school and the time off, and there's so much, and the teachers and everybody, everybody's been affected by this. So it's good to see everybody has something to come and rally behind now, and you can see it's been like building up, and it's amazing to see all these people so full of joy, so happy, coming together and dancing around and having a great time and like just enjoying their freedom. And it's beautiful. I've been crying so much over the last week watching all this happen, just tears of joy that to see beyond what brought these people together, because all that chaos that brought them together, but to see what came out of such chaos is so heartwarming, and it's part of this global shift. It's they've awakened the sleeping giant, as I said in that video,
They really did, and you can feel it energetically. So when I did go out there, Mom and I both went, and it was freezing cold. Yeah, I think she was. I wasn't, by the time that we went, I'll say, like, when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, maybe I'll be the, only one. But I did know, that as it was building and it was getting closer, that I wasn't likely going to be the only one. But it still was an amazing thing to see how many people were out there. And I'm out in the country. I'm rural. I'm not one of the overpasses that's through the cities, right? So there were so many people there, and it wasn't just honking on one lane of the highway. It was every lane, everybody going by, cheering and happy, and little kids out. And the mom next to me, she was out there with just two tiny little ones, on her own, juggling to do this. she took her youngest out of school to be there because she just thought it was so important for her to see this and how historic it is. And people had tears in their eyes. I did. And just the power of that level of people claiming their sovereignty as one in unity, coming together in love and respect, and be like, you're not going to all those tactics, all those cancel culture tactics of shaming and, you know, canceling, and we're going to call you this and call you that, you know, you're a racist, you're this and that, all those things being, they fall off of us. Listen, they fall off of sovereignty. They don't stick. Like, you can just smile. You don't have to get angry. You don't have to respond. You don't have to overly explain yourself. You just be and stand your ground and claim your freedom. And to see everybody doing that around you, and cheering, and the relief, it brings tears to your eyes after all that everybody has been through over these last 2 years. There's so many stories, you know, there's every end of the scale, from, you know, people like myself who like saw this coming like a couple years out and was like, I'm getting out of Dodge, I'm buckling down, I know what's coming, right?
Right.
And to other ones who just, even that, you know, it's been like in a simulation, you know, or maybe they saw it in the beginning where they're kind of like, what's up? But, you know, now there's a lot of people that, hey, I did what you said, I did this, I followed that, you know, I followed all the rules, this is not working for me.
Right.
You know, they've had severe and dire consequences to their life or the lives of their loved ones. Whether, you know, stories of their child committing suicide because they just don't want to live in this kind of world, to, you know, injuries from being stabbed, to loss of business and livelihood and life. You know, all these stories of people who have been shoved in the closet and masked, literally, to comply. And seeing everybody just say, you know, not in the anger, but in the love,
Mm-hmm.
and the true, feeling the true power within themselves of their own sovereignty. That's what this shift is all about. It really is. And that's what it's bringing out of people, you know. So I really did feel the momentum as we went over, you know, this wave that's been building over of this process, in these last few years, and it's been building and peaking, you know, that tsunami that we've all seen coming. And I really felt this switch over going into the new year. I was getting pounded with it visually through dream work and download visuals, and of that wave having crested and coming down now, coursing down the other side. And, you know, the speed with which that is going to happen. It's an amazing thing. There's some powerful archetypal energy that is in play with this right now, that really changed the game. It really switches the tables.
Globally.
Because, yes, globally, like, and on the manipulations and on the narrative. And that's why we're seeing this narrative now crumble and fall apart, you know, as the same timing of the people claiming their sovereignty, them coming up to fill that space as well. It's really going along in conjunction with it. And it really is. Sorry.
I wanted to ask you a question before we move on to the archetypes about Canada with the way. How do you think people are hearing about this? Because wasn't the media completely quiet about this whole convoy going across, or were they reporting it on the news as? I mean, I did hear, you know, the guy that's true to the dough. I'm just playing. Talking about this fringe minority with expressing
media.
unacceptable views. I'm like reading this, and I was like, my goodness, I hadn't realized. I'd never really listened to the guy before, but like how did the people at the bridge and at all these locations know about it? Were they are people
Social
talking?
media.
So it's on, okay.
TikTok kept me up to date following that. And then because it got so large, no matter the media coverage, so Mom
It
and I
started
were out
spilling over.
shopping.
Huh.
Well, there was radio coverage, so we were out doing some errands and shopping that day, and listening to their progress, and so the closest city to us, the radio station there, was announcing where they were at, a point that they were like half an hour away. So the timing just, of course, works out perfectly for us to make it. We didn't, like, the thing was so long, like,
Yeah, it was like an all-day event,
catch like
probably.
the main part of it, but we got to be out there as some of the first trucks were going by, and
That's amazing,
I
because
think
if you think about,
people were coming and going.
that's
like,
what I'm
filling up,
saying. Like if you think about just one of those bridges, people were coming and going all day long. So even
That's
if you see
right.
50 people there at any one given point, they're constantly being swapped
Yeah.
out by people coming and going. You can see people coming and
Yeah.
going. So there could have
Yeah,
been like
and
thousands of people at each of these bridges a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I'm between the route that was between between Belleville and Kingston, kind of in between there. So, but still rural where I am.
Right.
And they're coming from all directions, and it was a constant flow of traffic, of people trekking up there in the snow, and it was cold, and like up on that overpass with the wind blowing.
You can tell the flags are
guys,
those flags are
it's
whipping.
Cold. It's cold, but yeah, it was so exciting. It was just worth it. I would have stayed out longer if I could, but there's just plenty of people coming away.
I mean, it's like one of
Really
those.
was.
It's one of those things that I don't think people realize how the magnitude of what's happening. We're only going to realize it looking back, of course, but I think this is like we're in an incredible time right now, and we don't even realize just how awesome it is.
Well, that's been one of the really wonderful things about taking this time to be in a more observer role, not developing the opinions right away of everything, just really sort of sitting back and taking a broader view and allowing these different perspectives to play out and interact with each other. Because even if you don't agree with a certain perspective, well, right now, listen, it's interacting. It's an alchemic process. It's interacting with and converging with other perspectives and causing reactions and changes that are necessary to the process at play. So
it helps
when
to pull out.
You can see that, then you start to see the beauty, the awe inspiring. You start to see God in all of it, of what's playing out. You see that this is his story playing out, and that is the fabric of our reality. And to witness it, to be here to witness it, this transformation, and this hugely spiritual alchemic process that we're all experiencing in our own unique individual way, adding our own flavor, our own slant that molds this whole process.
Right.
Really allows you to to allow people to be what they are and change when they change, and flow with this process, and sit back and gaze at the beauty of it, even though it looks crazy and it's like, wow. When you start to see the themes that are playing out and how they're interacting, and enjoy the show.
And the things we see coming to the surface are things that's really been around for a while. It's just been hidden. So there's not a lot of new stuff. It's just people are realizing it because it's becoming so obvious. Like this whole media blackout. They've been playing the gatekeeper to information for a very long time, but now it's really apparent when you look out and you see the string of vehicles 8 hours long. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Nobody's talking about it. History's being set, records are being broken, yet nobody's talking about it. It at least deserves a record got broke today by these trucks.
Yes. Well, it's an amazing thing. So many of what is going on externally is a representation of the process that is going on within ourselves. And it really is about bringing to the surface your subconscious, consciousness, your program that you're running there, which is often, your hidden hopes and fears, the things that are in the shadows, the working machinations, the programs that you're unaware of. It's a soup of those things and crazy stuff going on in there. In a lot of ways, all this stuff that's being hidden and, things you can't imagine are going on or have been going on are coming to the surface. And in a lot of ways, that's really like exploring your own subconscious.
It is
right?
tough to see it that way too.
It'd be a
Like,
nightmare.
when you're looking at the world as a mirror, you're like, wait a minute, I don't think so. And stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, and that gets us into the archetypes. Let's talk about
Well,
those
it's like
for a little
being, consider when you're in a nightmare and you're in a situation, that's like, oh, it's terrible stuff you're viewing and experiencing. But listen, that's going on within you. Your mind has sourced that information. Your subconscious has pulled those stories to create that experience for you. So it really is a smaller version of what's playing out on a larger scale. So but yeah, there's a really open up and emerging of these three levels and of that subconscious, the shadow work coming up to be acknowledged by the consciousness, but as well this harmonization of really bringing your higher awareness, what you really feel in your heart, that inner sovereignty and higher truth, divine truth, that the consciousness that exists outside of space and time, so has access to all knowledge, really, right? And we're really merging those three levels together, and that's what we're seeing visually playing out before our eyes right now.
Oh, totally. I totally agree with that. Because, and it's like one of those things where you can look at something, you can get sort of triggered by it or whatever, and then go and meditate on it for a little bit, and you can totally pull back and get this different perspective about it. I was actually shown like a little archetype or a little example with this flashlight of mine that's got this adjustable head, and you can like focus in on one little detail, like, the beehive and the bees that are going to come out and sting you, or you can like pull out and get this broad view where it's not so intense on one little thing, and I was shown that with...
That's right.
I'm not selling flashlights, by the way. There's no link in the description box, just saying.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But, see, metaphors are the way that higher self communicates with us.
Yeah.
That's understanding like how your intuition works and how you receive that inner guidance and how it communicates to you, which may be different for all of us individually. But, for myself, that's definitely been a focus over this time, and realizing that this really is a convergence, experiencing it in dream. I know we've talked about it.
Yeah.
This harmonization of these three awarenesses, levels of awareness, into a unified field, and actually experiencing that, which is like you literally vibrate. It's like chords come together, and the volume of that harmonization just expands. So,
and to tie two things that you mentioned together, you had talked about letting go of some of the perspectives and seeing different people's perspective about what's going on and letting go of that. But I've also seen the connection with what you were just saying about this merging with your higher self and trusting the information you get from that, and like using that as your main source for information. And then everything in the external world should support that or confirm that. And that's what I'm noticing. There's so much going on, so many different views and perspectives. And I give everything a maybe, right? You just set it on the shelf. Maybe. That's right. I don't know. I don't, to be honest, completely
all about
100% honest.
Odds.
I don't know. I just know things are working out. I feel it in the deepest part of me. Things are, when I pull back, like I was showing with the flashlight, and I allow everything to just be and observe, it's like this finely oiled machine that's happening perfectly right now. It might not feel perfect in my life. There's a little friction here and there, right? But the overall machine seems to be working well,
Well, that's where understanding the archetypal energies at play on that broader perspective does really give me the peace to allow these powerful energies to do what they're doing and watch them at work and watch how things play out and unfold, and and experience it with myself. If there's friction, allow the friction to uncover, the source.
Right.
And, really be able to ask the tough questions. The more we release the judgment on others, we can release the judgment on ourselves. We can forgive our own humanity, then we can forgive the humanity in others. We can allow for our humanity, and work with it, nurture it, and from a higher perspective. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit more about these archetypal energies or archetypes, like the jester, for instance.
Well, that's one of my favorites right now that I feel is really strong, and it is one of the most powerful archetypes out there, because especially in for this process and what's going on, because what the jester does is can really dissolve the identity, ego, or the story, right? And it really is a situation of, again, another great archetype that's playing out right now is that the emperor has no clothes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that childlike innocent of the obvious, stating truth through comedy. And it really is that moment right now where it's on parade. The narrative is on parade for everybody to see, and it's the real sovereign one. It's that energy that stands up and says, out of no one in the crowd, is everybody's going along with it, and they're like, are you kidding me right now? He's got no clothes on.
Right.
Does nobody else see this? You can't. What I like about the jester is that you can't shame the jester. And the jester has no fear of the emperor or the king. They had a high position at court because that was their job, was to humble the king, and to do it through wit and humor. And I love that it's Canadian, this movement, because in a lot of ways, there's a lot of jester energy within Canada. We've produced a number of amazing comedians. There's a real dry sense of humor and a real stating the simplicity of kind of what things are
Right.
at times, in sort of a humble way, and not afraid to make fun of ourselves, not afraid to laugh at ourselves. We have that pride, but it's a humble pride, and there's a real strength behind it, and to just say what things are in a humble way, and
But
with
straightforward,
a dry
too.
sense of humor.
Yeah.
So the jester, it also plays out. That's why memes are so powerful, why they're working such magic on this, is because the power of what they have to kind of pop the obvious right in your face and find the humor in it, and
Which is
it
perfect
really
in an
breaks through
informational
that.
work, right?
Well, yeah, it breaks through the narrative.
Yeah.
It cracks basically the narrative, just because if you picture the emperor who's gone power crazy and dictating to everybody, and he thinks he's the the big man. Well, the jester's the one who comes up and whispers in his ear, no, you're not. You're human. You're full of faults. You're full, and takes that narrative and that pride down like nobody else can. Not the knight with his sword, right? It's a really different and powerful energy. So, and it is perfect to apply to what's being got to counter the cancel shame culture.
Yeah.
Jester has no shame. He doesn't care. He doesn't, whatever. You think you're funnier than he is? No, you're not. And everybody in the room knows it. So you're just making a bigger ass of yourself, right?
So it's like the Joker.
The Joker. Listen, they'll act like the donkey to point out the donkey and the real donkey in the room.
Right.
And there's no other tool like it. And that's why it's a powerful card. It's also, the Fool card, right? So they're not going to fall for the nonsense. Yeah. So, and there's a real leap of faith involved. But so also the other one that really comes into place, which is perfect for it, which is what I've been waiting for, which is the Deus Ex Machina, moment of the storyline, and that's something coming out of left field that you weren't expecting. The quiet one in the corner, the side plot that you forgot in the corner, right? And Canadians do have a history of being there when it really comes down to it, right? May take us a little while, but like when we show up, it's getting done. Right. It's going to get done one way or another, right?
And I was telling you before, I think we have a large percentage of the population that are sort of just passive to here, probably more in the Midwest where I grew up or whatever, but at some point when they get mobilized, if they need to get mobilized, it's going to be another group of these people that typically are laid back, but now which is what most Canadians are. Most Canadians, I think, listen, we'll stay out of your business. You do you. Yeah. But I mean, that has been changing over these last few years as we've seen this socialism. It's been ingratiated into the education system and everything. Jordan Peterson does a great job of talking about that. And he is a Canadian university professor, and he's talked about what has happened in our university system and how that has, been changing our society. But I was born in 1971, and I grew up in Scarborough, which is a suburb just outside of Toronto, same area Mike Myers grew up in, right? And it was a wonderful experience. I had every different culture around me. Every neighbor had a different background. A lot of immigrant families, and not immigrant, but every friend I had a different culture. And I ate at their houses. When I was a kid, you just got up, you got on your bike, and you went and knocked on doors till you found somebody to play with. Right? And you played at their house and they played at yours. You ate at their house, right? I tried every different kind of food. I learned about all different kinds of religion very young, and I grew up with that. It was a wonderful experience. It really opened my curiosity so that I was, I loved reading about different cultures even when I was like, I read Shogun at like 10 years old. You know what I mean? I was really into all that. I thought it was amazing. It really developed curiosity about different cultures and learning from that. And I think so many other Canadians grew up that way. There are all kinds of European and all different countries that converge here and form this, interesting mix. But there's a shared, fundamental values of freedom and sovereignty, and that, you can do what you want with your life. And well, what's coming out as counter to that, though? I mean, when you think of the higher up saying, well, typically you guys are used to you do you, I'll do me, everybody's happy. But now they're saying, no, you do what we say. And now we're like, wait, we enjoy our freedoms here. So
and
we were willing to go along for a little bit, but enough's enough with this.
Don't confuse our our patience, our ability to allow for other perspectives and for people to have their own choices and live the way that they want to live. Don't confuse that. We're not going to give up our own,
like with a sign of weakness or something, right?
Right. That's
and that's the whole thing with this. I've seen a lot of the things that seem to be orchestrated towards those who are more service to others, right? Like it's well, I'll do it for you, and it's kind of presented that way. Well, don't do it for you, do it for someone else. And you see this repeating theme that seems to play on people's empathy, people that are compassionate, like, well, I don't really want to play along, but I don't want to seem like the jerk here, so I'll go ahead and do it, and because I'm a nice guy. But
And that's, yeah,
there's a certain
that's
line,
Canadian.
and we talked about that. Like, people are reaching their line. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like everybody's got a certain place that they're like, enough is enough, and a lot of people have reached
that's
that
right.
point. You know.
Well, that's it. It's gone to the other side. It's like, that we have all this patience to be like, hey, I want you to be comfortable. No, I don't want to say anything to offend you. I don't, like, I want you to have the experience you want to have, and I want you to feel happy and safe. But they've hooked us in the gaslighting and everything else, all these narcissistic games, right? It really is the narcissist empath scenario, and why a narcissist is able to get an empath into those situations, right, and play on their empathy,
Yeah.
and
And use it against them, really.
and use it against them to give up their own viewpoint, to give up their, to continue to make concessions, and to bring back their boundaries over and over and over again. But a truly sovereign person, at some point, there's a line there. Okay, you're not putting that in my body. No. No, and no.
Right.
Not happening. No. Yeah. So, and that doesn't have to be said in anger. You can say it with a laugh, like, no.
Right.
No.
And that's the
Right.
beauty, though. I'm so glad people are stepping up and being inspired through this whole thing. And even in freezing temperatures, I can't believe people are out. It's so cold and they don't seem to care. They're just waving their flags.
Oh no, yeah, we can do it. We can do the cold. Yeah, thank you very much.
I see all these trucks like
Yeah.
loaded up with like an inch of ice on them. I'm like, where do these guys come
Yeah.
from? Sheesh.
Yeah.
All that ice.
And it was cold, but worth every second of it. We're not afraid to brave the cold to get something done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we're certainly, I think, always there to support. Like, we want to support. So, and people were just waiting for this, waiting for somebody. We can't rely on our military, obviously, to protect our rights, which they should be doing. The police to protect our rights, which they should be doing. So who's going to do it, right? What
But
am
it appears
I
that
going to do? Me with my, mom's almost, she's in her late 60s. What are we going to do?
yeah. Doesn't it
Right?
appear that
Who's
a
going to
lot of
defend
the
us?
police are probably on board, although they're not, like, I don't know, taking their hats off and marching with people or whatever. They're pretty much letting people express themselves without any sort of resistance there in Canada, right? I mean, these are Canadians too. These are people
Yeah.
that if it came down to it, are they going to turn on the people, or are they going to join with the people if it came to that point?
Well,
What do you feel
you know
like?
what? Well, I think the percentages are still there. Listen, there's a lot of unity for sure, but
Yeah.
not everybody is in agreement,
Yeah.
and that's never going to happen. So,
That's true.
but you're always going to have pockets, and even if there wasn't, fake actors implanted, you can't have a million people and everybody, be on the same page. They're going to have their own perspective. So, and they're going to have their own reasons for doing what they do. We just have to let it play out. I don't know. We'll see how many resign and walk away. I know we have one major RCMP who's stood up and made a statement that he is stepping away from his job and supporting, and I think many will follow suit, but we can't expect that every will. And I think there's still some that are going to think that this is the right thing to do and be following the narrative for whatever reason. Right?
Well, it's 2022. Do you think it's time for us to start coming back a little bit more often?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was the inner guidance to take that break and go introspective on a different level. I've learned so much. The downloads come rather fluidly now. So, I think that I have a lot more to share on a different level. I've changed a lot, since we started doing this program.
Yeah, me too.
And, how I'm perceiving and going through this process, even where
It's
I'm
so
at.
easy, so much easier to connect to, like, drawing, doing art or music or whatever. Then it's so nice to sort of go through periods in your life where you kind of, you get into art again, you get into music again, and then you can cycle back around, and you can see a
Yeah,
difference. Kind of like if your kid goes and stays with grandma for 2 weeks, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can see you're bigger, or whatever. Sometimes it takes that break
that's right.
to realize how things have changed, and I can definitely see a change with the music, and just
Yeah.
it really pulls you into the divine. I mean, you really feel that connection so much stronger than before. It's in the air. I
Hmm.
don't I don't know if it's just I've changed a lot too, so it's hard to even
Hmm.
know. Is it just in the air? Have I changed that much? Is it
Is
a
it
little
just
bit of
me?
both? Both? A little bit of both? I think it's a little bit of both. I think
I
everybody
think
can
it's a
tap into
lot.
this.
My perception of how I am experiencing this reality is changing on a multitude of levels.
Yeah.
It's changing how my consciousness works, how I experience time. It's increasing my level of telepathy. We mentioned that.
That's right, because you and
There.
your mom have stuff that happens all the time, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Even with Travis too. Since I had a highly lucid dream where I think it was really out of body, and I went to see him in that space, recognized that he was present in that moment that I experienced, but that didn't necessarily match up with the time and place that he was experiencing while I was sleeping, but that on some level I was visiting him, and for the first time I passed my form through him, through his head, to see what it would do. It was
Like
like,
Abby was
let's do
just
an
talking about,
experiment.
something went through her head.
Right, yeah. Well, I actually moved through him, and really felt this sensation with it. So that was a different levitation experience, and it's been interesting since then how many times I find he'll be sharing his dream stories, and elements, major elements of his dreams are like a movie that I was watching the night I had that
Right.
dream, like
Yeah.
yeah, quite a few times. And he'll start telling me this and describe me the surroundings and the scenario, and I'm like, oops, I think I put something in there again, because that was everything that I watched last night to amazing detail,
But that
So,
reminds me of my daughter. My oldest last night was telling me about that she was, I guess her husband had gotten a new game that night before while she was asleep, and he was up playing it while she was asleep. And then he went to bed. The next day, she woke up remembering she had this dream about being this character in the first person point of view with these yellow gloves on and everything. She wakes up and he's like, check out this new game I got. And it's this character with the yellow gloves on.
that's it
And she's
exactly.
like, I don't know if I was picking up on
What?
him while he was playing it, or when he came to bed he was still thinking about it or dreamt about it, and
Hmm.
it bled over into my mind. But it was so
Yep.
crazy because of the detail, you know the just the yellow gloves and all that, and running around, and
Yeah.
the place looked the same. So she was clearly seeing it somehow, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, same thing. Well, one of the scenarios, because there were several, but one of them was I'd watched Harry Potter, and it was the first one, and he's describing the whole castle and all, and uh, and then their ogre got loose, and I'm like, that was the episode where the ogre gets loose from the base. I'm like it was all in there, but
Wow.
yeah, exactly, just that. And I do like, and I saw downloads about it, where they really told me, okay, well, you remember when you went in there and you passed through his energy field like that, you increased the level of connection for telepathy. So there's it's much more streamlined. But there's a deep understanding, much like you and I have, an ability to relate stories to each other,
Yeah.
and the experiences that we have a little bit beyond words, because we can't always put the words to it. So the increased telepathy really allows for this sort of instant transformation of the experience, which did happen with you and I just last week, or the week before,
Right. Right.
um, where I was telling you about a dream I had, and before I even told you,
I
you were
started
already
getting
visually seeing
snapshots
it,
of it. Yep.
right? And it was a simple scenario of an experience of time, and I was sitting by my bedroom window, or sitting, and I was looking out the window and just slowly blinking, like opening and closing my eyes. And each time I did so, the view would change seasons. it was winter, then it was spring. So before I'd even had the opportunity to explain that to Shane, he's
I started
already
seeing
seen
it
the
right
picture.
when you started telling the story, as if I was tapping into whatever you were sending, you know what I mean, at that
Well,
moment,
that's
thinking
it.
about it.
But the thing is, so when I do that, so especially when we talk about dream work and I take in these scenarios, I do it like I do go into sort of this state,
Yeah.
right? I sit back in myself and I go into that experience.
Hmm.
Um, and and I know that I'm transmitting that experience to you before I've said it. As soon as I go into that mode, I I know that I'm transmitting the expression, the experience of what it was to you.
Right.
The words just come later. So
It's almost similar to how we talked about. I don't remember if it was on the air. Probably not, because it seems like it was recent. It was
mhm,
one of our conversations. But you were talking about dream analysis in one of our conversations, where you were talking about whenever you like decipher someone's dream, it's like you actually go into it, and it almost becomes your own dream or your own memory because you went into it so heavily that
that's right.
you've experienced it rather than just hearing it or whatever.
Yes.
And then I talked about the same way it happens in BQH sessions, that I almost feel like I get inserted into the session and I'm seeing what the
Mm-hmm.
person's seeing, and I also get little visuals and stuff. And I've had it happen before. I'm like, I see, and they're like, yes, you see. And I was like, oh, you're sending me like some
Mm-hmm.
kind of mine email, right? With an
Right.
attachment. So it's like
Right.
getting to that point where we can get used to all of these sort of telepathic things that's probably happening automatically. We just don't realize a lot of it. Like I realized the other day,
Yeah.
someone's about to pull out in traffic in front of me, and in my mind I was like, don't do it, and they like hit the brakes, but they didn't look at me. It's like they just had a feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
feeling of me telling them, don't do it, you're about to pull out in front of me, don't do it, and I just said it
Yep.
in my mind, but maybe they picked up on that now. Maybe that's, I would imagine it would be like that, wouldn't it? Like I directed that
Yep.
thought at them. Don't pull out in front of me. I'm right here, And they're like, "Oh, sorry," but it was all a
That's right.
telepathic, automatic thing, and it might have been
Yep.
like this the whole way, and we just didn't realize it, or maybe a much more subtler version. You know what I mean?
I think as our energy becomes clearer and our process becomes clearer and we reduce the programs, our energy directed and focus of intention for what we want done becomes much more powerful because we're not so dissipated, um, running all these false
Yeah,
narratives
yeah, and distracted. That's a whole
and
nother thing.
distracted.
Like I was saying,
Yeah,
going
yeah,
within for the real answers, but when you're getting
yeah,
bombarded with all of these distractions that a lot of them don't even matter. They're just like
yeah,
the monkey jumping around. Hey, look over here. Don't pay attention over there, or
yeah.
within.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up the point about the memory, like sourcing, like experiencing other people's dream scenarios. So because that's something I really like over the last few months and distilling this process of how my mind receives information
Hmm.
and like where downloads come from and how they work within my own experience anyways. And I've really been able to narrow down this process that and that how it starts is an image is introduced from the top right hand side, sort of comes in from this direction right here,
Hmm.
and it kind of comes in and flashes across the internal viewer screen,
Hmm.
and it'll often display a metaphor, the mechanics of some kind of animation, some kind of thing that shows me. So when this does this and this goes in this, right?
Right.
That does that, and I go, oh, right. And then I'll also get um, usually one, two, or three like keywords,
Yeah.
like key phrases, and they come in from just behind, again, the right side, but comes a little bit like somebody's whispering in my ear. I noticed I used to tilt my ear like a dog listening to a sound when I do tarot
Right.
cards. So, so I noticed that, and it'll also like a stamp. It'll imprint the words on the visual screen, like the phrases. It'll have like an actual font. It'll have like
Right.
and I'll see the words visually as well. So once it does that, then it goes to sourcing, and it sources dream material a lot more
Hmm.
than just regular life. It may pull some life memories or some instances, but a lot of the stuff that it sources, and it starts pulling like a slideshow,
Hmm.
and it comes from the left hand side,
Right.
and that's pulling from my own memory experience. So what I was noticing there was no difference in pulling that information in and experience and going through the dream experience. There was no difference from my own memory of a dream or like sharing your memory of a dream, right? Once you are talking to me, I'm like beside your shoulder, I'm in that place with you, and I'm walking through it with you, and it has a whole visual experience, and it is just as real as that point as my own. Unless we get into the energy dreams or the like super lucid ones, and that's a whole other, then I can't even tell what reality is, what's real and what's not, right? But as far as like walking through the dream memory, there's no difference between pulling in somebody else's experience and my own once I've walked through it with them.
That's
So,
interesting
yeah.
that you describe a direction, because I've heard that several times from different people talking about feeling energy, or I feel like my consciousness shifted a certain way or whatever. And
Yeah.
I want to encourage people to chime in below in the comments if you have any of these experiences that you want to share as well. But yeah, so I can honestly say if I get like a what I call a download, an insight, something like that, it just appears as my own idea a lot of times, like just kind of pops in my head, or
That's right.
or it starts with something that triggers it. I'll see something, and then it just, this whole flood of information gets unlocked. That's beyond words,
Right.
like this whole
Right.
knowing. That's what I think people call it, a download, because it feels like you get more information per second than you should be able to if you're just thinking it out in your head, right? It's
That's
not this
right.
like long linear process where you sort of unpack something. It's like bam,
Right.
and you're like,
Right.
whoa, right? But
Yeah.
it still kind of feels like, besides a lot of times I'll be brought to tears because you feel that connection with the divine. You know it's not your own thought, and it's
The
overwhelming.
knowing.
Just to know that you like, wow, I'm really connecting to something right now.
Yeah.
And that's in the air right now with all that's going on. This loving. My daughter just texted me this morning, Gabby, the one I had on earlier, and she was talking about how it's like, when you have that loving, just that feeling of it when you have a newborn and you're just so in love and you're in tears and it's just surreal. And I was like, yeah, I'm feeling it too. It's in the air. You can tap into it if you're not distracted, right, by all the stuff.
Right.
But you can tap
Right.
into that right now, and
Yeah.
it feels amazing. And when we do that, we're tapping into each other and this whole grid and all these people all around the world that's tapping into that, and that is more powerful than I think most of us realize. And I think the powers that be know, or they'd be reporting on stuff. They're like, oh, we can't let the word get out about this, man. That's going to spread like
Right.
wildfire, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Exciting time to be alive. Seriously.
It is.
But all right, so let's wrap this up, and we'll be back in the next week or two or something, and we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
And come back.
Yeah, we'll do another. There's lots more to share. So there's definitely a lot that I've learned and sort of developed and come to a better understanding of, and love to share some of it. And if it works for you. If it doesn't, pitch it. Whatever. We're all different.
Whatever resonates, and we're all on our individual journey right now. So
Exactly.
yeah, always trust within your inner guidance before anything, and I say right now is the time to just really follow your heart and your desire, and that, man, there's that energy, that's that pull, whatever it's pulling you, and I think we're all different. So, I get drawn to music or art or whatever. Did you see the new art piece I did? All out of blue pills.
No, I didn't. You'll have to show it to me.
Yeah, I got that like I don't know, yesterday or the day before, and I was like, oh my gosh,
Right.
that's so perfect, because it is. It's this moment. It's this red pill moment for a lot of people, and there's no more blue pills. It's like,
Yeah, they're
all out of blue pills.
sorry. Sorry
So
about
there
your
we
luck.
are. All right, well, lots of love and light to each and every one of you. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Peace.
Mm-hmm.